All right, is this on? Okay, welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming to our April program on battling the bills. And my name is Dorothy Griffin. I'm with Griswold Home Care, and I'm the co-chair of the leadership team for ACAP. So we're excited to have you here. The reason that we have ACAP, it stands for Adult Children of Aging Parents, and it was started by Frances Hall in Hickory area, and her desire was just to help people see what are the things that you can be educated on so that you're prepared for taking care of your parents and addressing some of the needs that you may face in the future or you may be facing at this moment. And then from that location, they started other chapters, and we brought this chapter to the Wilmington area, ACAP Cape Fear, back in September. So we're just getting through our first year here. So our mission is to provide information, resources, support, and community. That's the reason for the in-person. And I know we have people that are also streaming live, and we hope that they can also feel a part of this community of people who are going through some of the same things together. So what to expect, we're going to hear from Lisa Salines-Mondello on financial and legal issues. We're going to have some announcements, and we're going to hear from our sponsor at the beginning, and then we do try to wrap up around 7:30, just so you kind of know what the time is. If you need to use the restroom, you go out these doors and down that hall so that the main desk is on your right, and the restrooms are back there on your right. And also just want to make sure you're aware of the program schedule through August on your table, so you make sure to take that with you when you go. So if you have any questions during the program, our leadership team members have the green ACAP shirts on, and you can feel free to ask them. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our sponsor. These programs are put on free for the community thanks to our sponsors. And this evening we have Intercoastal Realty Corporation, who is also a core sponsor, which means they help to support us all throughout the year. So Don's going to introduce himself and Intercoastal Realty.
Thank you, Dorothy. Good evening. My name is Don Harris. I am with Intercoastal Realty, and I'm not going to speak a long time because most of you probably know a little bit about Intercoastal Realty. Hey, Debbie. We have been in Wilmington since 1976, and we're a community brokerage firm, full service. Our passion is our community, and that's why our owners wanted to sponsor ACAP, because we realize what a needed service we're providing. So we're full service brokerage, as I said, but my biggest message that to anybody watching or here, if you want to sell, now is the time. Our inventory in Wilmington is extreme low levels, so it's a seller's market. So if you have any interest or need to sell, downsize, we'll be happy to help you. So thank you for coming, and here's Lisa.
Actually, I'm going to introduce Lisa real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. She needs more than that. I have the pleasure of introducing to you Lisa Salines-Mondello. She is a principal attorney at Salines-Mondello Law Firm here in Wilmington. And I'm going to have to read all this because she has a lot to tell you about. She has an advanced law degree in taxation, and she's devoted her skill set to protecting what is important to her clients through strategized and advanced planning. She's certified as an elder law attorney by the National Elder Law Foundation, a North Carolina bar certified specialist in elder law, and she's also accredited by the Veterans Administration. She is also a member of the North Carolina and Massachusetts bars and the National Academy and North Carolina Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, the North Carolina Board of Legal Specialization, and the New Hanover County Estate Planning Council. And in addition, she is a current member, and she's previously served as president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. Is that right? All of those of the North Carolina chapter of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorney. So we are very thankful she has time for us tonight with all of that. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you for that great introduction. Hello, everybody, and welcome those watching from home. So tonight we're gonna, I'm gonna move off of this slide. Firm, thank you, did a great job. We're going to talk about elder law, estate planning, asset preservation, financing, care. So many people don't know what elder law is. Elder law services many aspects of estate planning, elder law, public benefits planning, veteran planning, tax planning, equal rights for seniors, exploitation, huge area. So Our firm does service all those areas. But tonight we're going to focus on financing care for your loved one, whether that's a parent, sibling, or an adult child. So, of course, I want to hear about your current concerns because you're here. So if anyone at home has a question, please type it into the chat and they'll read that to me and we can address that. If anybody in the audience would like to shout out a question, Dorothy's going to write that down and I'd like to make sure I address that. So if you had a question you came with today, go ahead and raise your hand, shout it out. Okay. If we get any questions from our audience at home, let me know. But in the meantime, if you have questions as we go through, please feel free to ask the question or to send it into the chat. I will ask you, though, when you do a question, make it a general question because we don't want to give too much of your specific facts about your family that are personal to you to the audience. I'm going to talk about Medicaid and VA. VA meaning veterans benefits. We're going to talk about how you finance care. Talk about some action steps you can do today, whether you're in crisis mode or pre-planning mode. And then, of course, at the end, if you have any questions, we'll talk about those questions as well. So most people tell me that they're worried about how they can protect their family. They're worried about how they're going to protect a spouse if they're the one who's been diagnosed. If they're the person who's the caretaker, they're worried about how they're going to protect the person they're caring for, whether it's their child or a relative or their spouse or a partner, because what happens if they get hit by a bus? And so we're always thinking about what if the unexpected happens? You know, the issue here is none of us wake up in the morning thinking when we cross the street, the Twinkie bus is going to take us out. The Twinkie bus, most of us at our age know what the Twinkie is. The younger people don't know what a Twinkie is. So I hope you can relate to the Twinkie bus. But do we want to become a burden on our children or on our spouse? And do the people that are caring for us have to deplete all of the assets in order to give us good quality care? Because they still have to go on. And so people are worried about, are they going to run out of money? What's going to happen? Now, we're going to talk about life expectancy because if we're lucky, we're going to live a long life. And we hope that long life is going to be healthy in all ways, physically, emotionally, and cognitively. But how is the law going to affect us? Is the law built to pay or is it built for you to pay? What happens? Some people have premarital agreements. Do those premarital agreements protect your assets if your partner becomes ill? And what happens to our caregivers if they stop working and start taking care of a parent or a loved one? What can you do? Do you keep going right along, hoping for the best? But you want to know when you should act. Again, pre-planning might be out. You might be in crisis today. So what does that mean? What can you do? And where can you go for help? Having an organization providing resources, telling you about things that are out there you might not know, that's important. So you want to tap into that. Identifying the professionals that are going to assist you. I always say, if I need open heart surgery, I'm not going to my dentist. Okay. My dentist says he's a doctor. Well, I'm not letting him cut my chest open. And again, when you're thinking about elder law planning, you want to be going to professionals, and those professionals can be lawyers. Those professionals can be CPAs. They can be financial planners. And we're going to talk about that. So I want to talk about a little bit about life expectancy. If right now in this moment, if you have a pen or in your mind, how old are you going to live to? What do you think? I mean, everybody has a number in their head, right? They think about when is my ticket going to get punched? This is important because if you're going to live a long life, you might need care. Some statistics say that 40% of us are going to need some type of long-term care before we're laid to rest. Okay, how's that going to get paid for? And if we're going to live a long life, our retirement might not carry the day. Or if we're paying for somebody else's care, we might spend it down. We might not have anything left for us. So we've got to think about this life expectancy. So I love this slide because I like Willie Nelson, and I think we can all age with fun and grace. But what's interesting is how many folks are going to be over 65 by 2034. And what's more interesting is there's less children being born than ever. So if there's less folks being born, who's going to take care of us? That's a scary thought. So we've got to start thinking about our life expectancy and financing our care. And that means if we're taking care of somebody else, how do we finance their care so we can save what we have for us? Because we might live a long life if we haven't been diagnosed with something today. You know, I hate the statistics part of any presentation because it's kind of boring. So this was done by an investment company, citations there in the corner. So you can go over to JP Morgan and take a look at it. But what they're challenging us to think about, if we live 35 more years past our retirement, are we going to have enough money? So in 1935, I believe $5,000 was worth something like, in today's dollars, $56,000. Okay, so and then $100,000 was worth something like, in today's dollars, $17 million or something crazy like that. So what does that mean? What's that Social Security going to be worth in 35 years? What's that 401k going to be worth? So we've got to think about these things. We've got to start planning. So I'm giving you more statistics, which are super boring. But what's interesting is that we know that we're going to have over 5 million folks with Alzheimer's. But what I found really moving here was that 18.4 billion hours of care valued at over $232 billion are provided by family caregivers. Wow. What if those folks weren't doing all this care and they were out working and earning? What would that mean? What does that mean? So I think we need to be aware of the numbers as we go forward, we start planning. So the functional types of disability on that bottom line, if you can see that. And here, cognitive, hearing, mobility, vision, self-care, and independent living. No one says, I want to be in an institution. No one wants to go to a nursing home. No one wants to go to assisted living. Everyone wants to be at home. I think hospice has a statistic that 80% of folks want to die at home. And I think they say that only 20% of them actually do. So that's kind of a scary thought. So we've got to start planning. Now the statistic here, the blue is Medicaid. So who's paying right now? So this is an older slide. It goes back to 2015. I wasn't able to find more updated statistics here, but we've got 51% for Medicaid, other public benefits, out of pocket around 20%, private long-term care insurance we're going to talk about. So what we know is that we've got to do pre-planning and we've got to do crisis planning. Pre-planning means I've not been diagnosed with something or I just have been diagnosed. Crisis planning is I'm looking in the next 12 months to be placed in a facility, or I need folks to start coming in to help me or help my loved one. So we've got to start thinking that. So we have to be proactive, not reactive. And this is President Bush. He jumped out of an airplane. I think this is in his 90s, but you can see he's got some in tandem and he's got a parachute because we can't do it alone. We have to have a team and we have to build that team. But this means that we have to have some kind of attitude towards risk versus consequence. All right. If you have a child, you get this, right? Yeah. You get this. Okay. Yeah. So I said to Amy, that third one, the child should be on the ground. But she said, no, that's too dramatic. Let's just leave him up in the air. So we all know there's a risk. We all know there's a consequence, but it's what we believe the likelihood is of that risk occurring. Nobody 10 years ago would have believed we would have been having a pandemic and it would have went through the whole world. But now we see that risk happened. So pre-planning, what does that mean? Well, I like to say, let's think of our life in 3 columns. Life, you're in control. You're calling the shots. Death, Everybody has an expiration. None of us know the day our ticket's going to get punched. And then there's that disability. So if you're here and you're watching, you already know that disability can happen to yourself or someone you love, whether it's by disease, whether it's cognitive, or whether it's by accident. So pre-planning means we're planning. So what does that mean? So, this isn't a planning seminar, so I just want to touch on it, but imagine that you are the caretaker and this person is dependent on you financially maybe, or for your help. What happens when you don't wake up? What is in place financially and with help, housing? What have you put in place? And if you haven't put that in place, do it now. And this could be you're caring for your adult child. What happens? Everybody wants to wait. It's not the right time. Again, we never know when the Twinkie bus is going to hit us. So today's the right time. So disability planning, pre-planning, means that we're putting in place a mechanism that can finance our care or a team that can arrange for our care. And death planning is when I know that if I die today and my spouse or loved one has an issue, cognitive, physical, emotional, that I know that I'm not going to leave them assets because I don't want to disqualify them from any public benefit that they could be qualified for or entitled to. But I don't want to take my money and give it to my sister and say, hey, listen, sister, you take care of Johnny. I trust you. Because sister could die. Sister could get sued. Sister could get divorced and her husband could take everything. That's not a plan. So we've got to think about this. So that's pre-planning. Crisis planning is kind of the same. When you're in control and you've been diagnosed with something, you know you have something. Perhaps it's progressive, perhaps it is terminal. So you know you have to do something, but when's the right time? Disability. Okay, I'm going to be disabled, and then ultimately this may result in my death, short-term or long-term. How do I finance my care? Do I want life support? Do I not want life support? There's a lot of stuff happening with the right to die in the country right now. Many states are looking at physician-assisted end of life, which means that you go to that state, you don't have to be a resident, physician could prescribe medication that you could end your own life. They're trying to get that passed. North Carolina is a little bit behind that. Physicians here are do no harm, so they don't want to participate in that. And if North Carolina approves the right to die, you'd be able to do self-administer that. But wait a second, what if you can't? What if you have some kind of condition that doesn't allow you to self-administer? Do you want somebody else to make that decision for you? Is that in your healthcare document? Or you just told your best friend to make sure they take care of it? You have to make sure that your healthcare power of attorney outlines your wishes and whether you want to take advantage of something like that in another part of the country. Hey, healthcare agent, move me to Oregon. Move me to Vermont. Send me somewhere where I can get what I need. This is about crisis planning, okay, and how we want to go out of this world. Do we want to be at home? Have we set up a mechanism for that to happen? So there's a disconnect for sure. So of course, I can't read my own slide because I have the print so small. I hope you can, so I'm going to read it to you. Death planning defines who gets what when we die. That's easy. The question is, should they get it? If they're disabled, do we need to protect it for them? We got to define how we want to die. Life support, no life support. Do I want to be able to dictate when my end of life is? Who's going to manage our affairs after we die? Is that person able to do it? Create financial protections for those we leave behind, spouse, children, mother, father, somebody else, pets. And again, if I'm giving assets to my special needs mother because I want to make sure there's money for her if I die before her, or to my special needs child or spouse, I need to be able to explain what's supposed to happen. If I just hand it to them, they'll get no public benefits, okay? Life planning. This is easy. You're in control. You define how you want to live. This is the best part. We're in control, who we live with, what we do. That's easy. Determine your legacy, give instructions, all good stuff. Plan for care. The disability planning we touched on. Do you have a death plan, a life plan? What does it look like? It's silly. Here's one. I like windows. Love light. Something happens to me, make sure I have a room with lots of windows. I don't want to eat Tabasco sauce on any of my food. Don't put it on my sandwich. I'm going to throw it at you. Okay? Then they're going to lock me up because they're going to say she's violent. But I think this is important, right? Very important. If English isn't my first language, make sure you place me somewhere where people can understand me so they don't understand what I'm saying when I'm screaming at them in another language. Make sure you've dealt with this, okay? Your disability documents, powers of attorney, healthcare powers of attorney, and a general HIPAA form. Make sure the people that need access have it. If you're helping somebody at home right now, do you have access to make decisions for them? Are you sure? When's the last time you read the documents, and what powers do you actually have?
Lisa, there is a question from
Yes.
Francis, actually from ACAP, asking about whether you'll touch on the most form in North Carolina.
Yeah, so the most form, just like DNR forms, so there's certain forms that your lawyer can't do for you. And, you have to think about some of the most form, DNR forms, those type of forms, and whether they are comprehensive enough with your wishes and when's the right time to execute those. This is one of those, is it too soon questions? And you must talk to your family to be sure that your family is in line with those kinds of end-of-life decisions so they're not at war with those decisions, okay? Create a plan for financing long-term care. Decide whether asset preservation is a goal. So asset preservation means I would like my family to inherit my money. I don't want to give it to a nursing home because I worked my whole life with my home, my farm, my land. Or it's, I don't care, pay it all to the nursing home. They're fine. They can do their own thing. It's really a mindset. What's important to you? Many times caregivers don't acknowledge that they could die. The people they take care of don't think of them not being there. Caregivers are under tremendous stress. And if you are a caregiver, I don't have to explain that to you, you already know. But one time I heard a doctor speak, Dr. Fretwell, many years ago, who's retired, and at Pace, and she said, being a caregiver, and I'm paraphrasing it, was like having an adrenaline surge in your body all day long, every day. And I think the example she gave was something like if your child was trapped under a car and you had to lift that car up, you could do it. But then after you did it, your body would be able to flush out that adrenaline. But when you're a caregiver, every day you're worrying something's going to happen. Your body doesn't get the flush because you don't get the respite. So caregivers, sometimes we find that they get sick or pass shortly after they place someone because they've been at this high alert for their body. So caregiver fatigue. So who's going to be in charge in a crisis? I mean, I think we've got to acknowledge that we have to have a chain of command, and we have to acknowledge that the person we name might have to step back for one reason or another. They get sick, they pass, they just can't do it anymore. So we never want to name just one person. We need that chain. We got to do that because we could have a corporation do it. We could have the state of North Carolina do it through the Department of Social Services, although that might not be ideal. That might happen. Or we could have a court-appointed guardian. So there's stuff to think about. So things that you're thinking about in your pre-planning or long-term planning are, do I have a healthcare power of attorney in place? How old is it? Okay. Oh, mine's from the year 2000. Probably want to get that looked at. So want to look at that. Durable power of attorney, law changed around 2018 from North Carolina. We adopted the Uniform Power of Attorney Act. Let's get that looked at. Do you have the original if it's prior to that date? Because it has to be filed to be valid in this state. Bank's not going to recognize it. A trustee, person who manages a trust for you if you're unable to manage your assets. VA, fiduciary. A VA fiduciary is someone the VA accepts as an agent for the veteran if the veteran lacks capacity. Okay? And that's a form you fill out through the VA. Guardianship. When there's a guardianship, the court appoints a guardian. Guardian of the person, tells me where I eat, where I sleep, how my medical care is administered. Or guardian of the estate, handles all the money. Now, this could be a problem if I'm married, because if there ends up being a guardianship and I'm married and we own joint money together, what do you think the guardian does with the joint money? They take it. They take half. Half goes over here for the person that is under the guardianship, and half is over here for the spouse in the community. That might not be the way you wanted things to play out. It's important to look at your documents. Make sure you're not going to be in that position. Okay? And does it even matter? Maybe. So how the law is going to impact the people we care about depends on what you do in your pre-planning. And if you have time, what you get done in your crisis planning, so that you make sure that your objectives are being met and the objectives of the person you're caring for are being met as to their care, their end of life, and their finances. How do they want it to go? Their money, their house. So available for cost of care. So basically, everything's available for cost of care. Your life insurance, your savings account, your brokerage account, your real estate, everything's available until you make it unavailable. So the question is, when we're talking about financing care, do you want these assets to be available for cost of care? Now, some folks will say, yeah, okay, I'm good with that. Others will say, no, something's going to be protected for me. I'm the spouse. How am I going to live? Well, wait a minute, I have a supplemental needs child. What about him or her? Or I'm not even married to Joe, but he said he was going to take care of me and now he has dementia. What happens to me? So everything's available unless you make it not available. Okay. But then we need to talk about how we're going to use these assets if we need to use them. Okay. So I know there was some question about life insurance, and I want to talk about life insurance first, because life insurance, if you've had a policy in place for a long time, you have term insurance and whole life insurance, which can be described variable life, flexible life, universal life. There's a lot of names. But if you've got a life insurance policy, or your loved one has for a long period of time, they've probably built up some cash value in that policy, and they have a face amount. So they're not going to be able to keep a life insurance policy greater than $10,000 that is a non-term policy and qualify for Medicaid. So we have to think about, what do we do with that life insurance policy? We also have to ask, do we want to leverage that life insurance policy by accelerating a death benefit, maybe to pay for their assisted living, because maybe they make too much income to qualify for a program that pays assisted living? Or do we want to accelerate that death benefit to use that money for nursing home or in-home caregivers? Do we want to sell that life insurance policy to a third party? And we have to think about those things, and we have to think about the tax consequences of making those decisions. So this is not a decision you should make without seeking assistance, because you want to know. Most folks will say, well, I'm going to borrow my cash value, but that might not be the best situation, because one, it won't be enough money, and then you may not be able to get out more of the money. So when you accelerate a death benefit, you might be able to get 60 to 70% of the face amount before the person dies. That's helpful, because that can help pay for care, whether it's home, assisted living, or nursing home care. If you sell the policy, then you also may get a very large chunk, depending on the person's life expectancy. So you can sell your policy based on life expectancy of usually 12 months or less. But if you have a terminal diagnosis, you can also accelerate based on a terminal diagnosis to get that policy paid out. That used to be under what they used to call the dread disease back in the 80s. And it was related to AIDS. So if you had an AIDS diagnosis, they figured you were terminal and they were going to give you some of that life insurance before you die. This is great money to get if you're in a crunch today and you want to keep the person at home and you don't have the money, or they need to go to assisted living and you don't have the money, or they don't qualify for another program we're going to talk about. Up above here, you'll see home equity conversions. Okay, so let's talk about these home equity lines, conversions, and what that really means. Reverse mortgage is what we're talking about. So well, one, most of the banks are not. Let's talk about equity lines first. A lot of the banks are saying we're not going to do these. We're getting out of the home equity line business. So if you have one by a certain date, you might be getting a letter that says, we're not, after June 1st, we're not letting you take on your draw anymore. So if anybody's relying on a home equity line right now, they want to reach out to the bank to see if they're getting out of this business, and they're going to give them a date that they're shut off. Because if they're using that money to pay for care, they may want to take a lump sum before they get shut down on them. So reverse mortgage, lots of folks say, should I do it? Should I not do it? There's times when a reverse mortgage can be incredibly helpful for somebody that wants to stay in their home, to finance the money, have money to stay in the home, get care, and pay for extra things they can't afford. There may be the situation where that might be a good idea, but it's not a good idea for everybody. Again, you want to talk to your professionals to make sure that's a good idea. The other piece of that is families have to realize if they do this reverse mortgage and then mom goes to a nursing home, they're going to call that no. So sometimes folks will come in and say, I got a reverse mortgage. Mom's in the nursing home. I have Medicaid now. We're all good. We took care of that. And then they get the letter. Oh, mom's in the nursing home. You got to sell the house or pay the note. So again, you don't want to do the reverse mortgage without talking to professionals so you understand how that's going to affect your public benefit and what that's going to look like long-term based on a lot of different factors. Of course, a reverse mortgage is expensive as well with the fees. But again, in some situations, it can make a huge difference to keep someone in the home. And that might be someone who is not disabled or diagnosed with a condition, but is a healthy person who just can't make ends meet, maybe because they have a lot of debt and they're really struggling. So sometimes that can be helpful. Any questions here? Okay. All right. Annuities, business interests, farms, cash, and retirement, all up for grabs when we're talking about public benefits. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to go, Lisa, don't worry about it. Not to worry. Mom put my name on the deed, gave it to me last week, signed it all over me. It's all mine. We're going to apply for Medicaid next week. Nope. They're not going to give it to you because you can't give your stuff away and apply for VA and Medicaid unless you do pre-planning before you apply. Okay? Whether you're in crisis or not, then some things can be exempt. Okay? Again, don't do it alone. Get help. So on this next slide, you see long-term care insurance. Long-term care insurance. Now, long-term care insurance isn't going to be helpful for a person that's in crisis with a diagnosis today. So long-term care insurance, there's folks that say, listen, I don't want it. I'm not going to need it. Nothing's going to happen to me. That's my husband. Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm going to live to 100 and then drop dead. I like the attitude. It's positive. But again, we just look at the statistics. Some of us are going to need help. And some people say, well, long-term care insurance is just too expensive. I can't afford it. Well, you know what? They've come up with some ideas now. And they've actually built long-term care insurance on a life insurance chassis now, so that it is more affordable to people. So they can give you long-term care insurance if you live and you need help. And if you die and you don't need help, the money goes to your family. And guess what? We're all going to die. So it actually is a win-win because you get it if you live and you need it, and you get it if you die because it goes to your family. So if you're healthy, it's a good thing to check into because it's going to bring money into your family. It's going to help you stay at home because now there's money to pay caregivers. And if caregivers are $20 an hour, someone just told me the other day they were paying somebody $30 an hour in home care. Then that's much needed money because most people are living on what they make now. So if they have to spend an extra $5,000-6,000 a month, that's going to be a problem, which may cause that person to go to a facility quicker than they need to. Okay, so that's something to look at. Again, because you might have longevity. Disability insurance. So disability insurance could be through your employer. So if you're working, you want to ask, do you have it? Is it a benefit you could pay for through your employer really cheaply? Can you get it on your own? Are you self-employed? Should you have it? Yeah, you should have it because this is going to give you some protection in case you get hit by a bus and live. So you can have money coming in, all right? Or you get an early diagnosis. You know, we think that these diagnoses are only for older people, but they're not. You can be young and get these diagnoses. You can be young and get a traumatic brain injury and never be able to work again. So again, we're thinking about how long am I going to live and do I need help? So disability insurance can help. If you're a person who just recently got diagnosed with something, or you know someone this has happened to, before they quit their job, because this happens, they get a diagnosis and they go, oh my gosh, I got to rethink. I'm quitting. I'm out. I got to go live my life. Well, maybe they should be pausing and trying to qualify for their disability under their employer so they can be getting in a check and then go figure things out. But lots of folks just quit. Okay. Family, sure. Family can pay, right? How long can they pay? Everybody might be able to kick in for a little while, but most people, they're going to be tapped out. Whether it's money or time, people are going to just get tapped out at some point. So we want to be thinking about if you're the caregiver, you might already be tapped out. We got to come up with a plan. If you're the healthy person, we got to think about who's going to take care of you and how you don't tap somebody else out. Grants, charities, senior centers, and local organizations. So it's always interesting to me that there are grants out there and money, but no one knows about it. So and again, this is a great organization. You want to tap into them to have them help you look for grants. Where are the grants? The senior centers sometimes will have, hours available that they're going to pay for someone to come into the home. And there's no financial qualifying application like there is for Medicaid. You want to be checking on that. So when they get a grant that they can give to others, you want to make sure you're in there, you're asking for it. Okay. And other local organizations or charities that might be raising money to help families or churches. So you want to be really tapping in for help, whether that help be financial or having a person come that's just giving you time to go out and do grocery shopping and not worry. So veterans benefits, I'm going to spend more time on this, but veterans benefits are available to veterans who served during wartime 1 day and for at least 90 days of active duty. Doesn't mean they had to be in the war necessarily, boots on the ground, except for Vietnam and some weird dates. But why I have this up is because the benefit I'm talking about here is aid in attendance. Okay. You'll see in yellow, veteran, aid in attendance, one dependent. That dependent is typically the spouse. That's the monthly amount. Widow of a veteran, because a widow, the wife can only collect if the veteran is deceased, $1,432. This is critical money that could help a person stay at home or finance assisted living. Now, there's some rules. There's always rules, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to talk to a certified attorney that's certified in VA, so they can help you navigate through that. But the person can still have some money in the bank. They don't have to be broke. And the nice part here is that this money can come in to actually be used to pay a family member that's giving care with proper planning. So if somebody is not working as much, this could be helpful to them if they're taking care of their loved one, okay? So this is a really important benefit, okay? Now, veterans were told this when they were discharged. They were too young. They didn't pay attention. They didn't care. They were thinking about the GI Bill. So this is up to us to educate them that this is here. There's some other stuff they can get. If somebody's homebound and they really only leave the house for church and they're really just, they're home, there's a benefit for that. But there's a benefit for low income pension. If someone just has a very low income, they could get a benefit, but otherwise they're healthy. There's a benefit there. But the max benefit is here. And this is for somebody who needs help with costs of care. Okay. Not to mention, if you're a veteran, there may be some other services through the VA that you can get them to pay for. Ramps, showers, those type of things. Okay, so that's something that you certainly want to tap into for your loved one. Now, presumptive conditions is on the table?
Yeah.
Okay, so on the table, and for those at home, we have a handout for presumptive conditions for a veteran that the staff can email to you if you email them. This is important. It changes all the time. Why is it important? If you have a veteran who has a disease and it is considered a presumptive condition, they can get disability. Now, who cares, right? Why? This is important because if they can be disabled, some disability can pass to the surviving spouse. That check. So everyone, if you have a veteran, should grab that list and look, and then Google any updates. They just added some more. I'm not sure if it's on that list or not, but that's really important because if we can get that disability for your veteran, we might have something that can pass to the spouse that's greater than what we have up here. Okay, all right. So what are our risks to our caregivers? Well, emotional and physical health decline. I mean, if you're a caregiver, you already know this, that your adrenaline's up, you're going to start getting sick, you're going to be exhausted, fatigued, you're going to be cut off from anything on the outside world because your world just became what you're doing. The problem is you're no good to the person you're caring for when this starts to happen. Quality of life is going to sink. So as your health declines being a caregiver, what have you put in place for yourself? And again, what's your plan if you don't wake up for the person you're caring for? You have to have relationships with people outside the care home. You have to keep those going. You have to have respite. You have to have your hobbies, because if you don't, you're not going to be any good to the person you're helping. And they probably wouldn't want you to continue if they knew that it was harming your health. Also, what we find in our practice is that children often stop working to care for a parent. Sometimes the parent pays them, which can be a problem for Medicaid if it's not done properly. But sometimes they don't get paid. Sometimes they just live there. So this is what I hear. Well, Johnny's moved in and he's helping me. And I say, oh, you paying him or what's going on? No, I'm not paying him. He's getting free room and board. I'm buying all the food. That's great. How old is he? He's 45. Oh, okay. So he's been there how long? Oh, probably 15 years. Now he's older. He was 45. He's like 15 years ago. So he hasn't paid into Social Security. Well, he's not working. Okay. Does he have any retirement? I look at Johnny. Well, I've been using it to pay for my health insurance, my car insurance. Okay. What do you do? What's your schedule? Well, I take Dad to the doctors. I go here with him. I do the grocery shop and I mow the lawn. I do this. Should he get paid? He's getting free room and board, and he's getting the groceries up there. And well, the problem is that caretaker child isn't paying into the Social Security system, so they're not going to have any money. They don't have a job, and they've been out of work for who knows how long. How are they going to get back into the workforce? Technology's moving. They're not moving with it. They've got no social life because their life is caring for their parent. So what is the loss to them? And it's more than just dollars. And then, will they qualify for Medicare if they haven't paid the quarters and met the Medicare qualifications under Social Security? Wow. Some of them don't even have health insurance because they're not paying it and they're not making any money, so they can't get the Affordable Care Act. Whereas if they were getting paid by the parent, even if they were only getting $12,000 a year, they would be getting then free health insurance through, or very low cost health insurance through Blue Cross Blue Shield through the Affordable Care Act, North Carolina. Okay, but when this is the things we have to talk about. So it's about financing care, but how do we finance the caregiver? All right, so these are the things to think about. And, you know, again, their quality of life goes down, which means they're liable to get sick. The life expectancy might shorten. So loss of what they can get from their employer. This is a big thing. So if someone has a job and they relocate to North Carolina to help, they gave up a job there, they are giving up their 401k, life insurance, they're giving up disability insurance with a big company, they're giving up paying into the Social Security system. They've just set themselves back. So what do we do about that? How do we fix that? And this is a family meeting. This is when you have to sit down and say, okay, what's this going to look like when mom and dad dies? Where am I going to be? Or I'm taking care of mom and dad in mom and dad's house. My brother and sister live in Utah. I'm doing everything. And there's a loose agreement that I should get the house until mom and dad die. And then guess what happens? Everybody wants their fair share because you got room and board for free and you got free food. What are you bitching about? Ooh, excuse me. Sorry. But this is what happens, right? So we've got to make sure you're with trusted professionals to help you navigate that. So what is the goal? What is the objective of the person who's sick for the person who's caring for them? How do we protect the caregiver? So when we look at this slide, we're looking at, of course, a financial planner. If there's money involved, savings involved, 401k, retirement, there are tax consequences for taking retirement money out. We want to make sure if we're going to be using that money, how much we take it, what year do we take it, how fast do we take it, who does it go to? We got to talk to the CPA, of course, because we're always looking at our taxes, and our lawyer. This is a team approach. We can't climb this mountain alone. We got to troubleshoot what the problems are, because the problems aren't just that we are taking care of someone who's ill. The problems are what happens to that caretaker when this person gets placed or this person dies or the caretaker gets sick. What are we going to do about that? Pre-planning is important. Pre-planning before another crisis occurs. I keep saying it over and over because it's critical. The crisis plan, we're in a crisis. How do we, okay, so here's an example of a crisis. Every day I talk to people. Dad's got to go to a nursing home. We don't have the money. Okay, so what are you doing? Well, we work. We leave him in front of the TV and we go to work. Oh, okay. Can he get out of the house if there's a fire? Well, not really. He really can't. No. Could he call the police? No, he can't use that cell phone. Okay. So guess what? If the person can't exit the house in a fire and they burn to the ground with the house, are you criminally negligent? Probably. You left them there. We hoped they might be able to get their walker and make it out the door. If they know, if they can get the latch undone, what do we do? Okay, so now we have them home sitting alone. Maybe there's no fire. All day long, staring at the TV. Is that a quality of life for them? So how do we take care of somebody but make sure they have quality of life? That's part of your crisis plan, making sure you build that in. Now, in the old days, they had something called a birth plan, right? People are going to have a baby. They wrote a birth plan. What's supposed to happen? Don't give me drugs. I want to hear music. I don't know. Something, right? Well, this is what we need. We need an aging plan. Do I want the window? Do I want fish on Fridays? Do I want to go to church on Sundays? And you got to make sure you get me there, right? Do I want Mabel next to me screaming all night, or do I want my private room? And how do I finance that private room if I'm on Medicaid? Well, you can't. You can build into a plan where Medicaid can pay, and there's money set aside to pay to upgrade to your private room if you plan for it. Okay, so again, pre-planning for the crisis, or we're in a crisis. Let's look at what we have. Don't wait till you're out of money, completely out of money, down to zero, and say, well, this is our bucket list, because now it's hard to do some of those things, right? So this is part of this. But trust your professionals, meet with them, and really research credentials, because you want to know who you're working with. It's not enough if someone has letters after their name. You got to make sure that they're in the sandbox that you need to be in, okay? So, this is always something I look at here, is these quotes, because they're inspiring to me, because I'm always thinking about planning. Planning for how we're going to pay for care for somebody else, how we're going to care for each other, our children. We have to plan. So sometimes people ask me about trusts. Is there any questions about how trusts work here? Is that a question that you all have? You guys are making this too easy. This is just too easy. There's nothing. Go ahead.
I did have a question. I have friends that have special needs children on the spectrum for autism. And I've heard of Life Plan Trust.org. They came out of Easter Seals and autism. They're a
Pool trust.
nonprofit, Life Plan Trust.
Yes.
They're up in ACAP. Are there organizations other than them that provide those type of services for special needs?
Yeah. So the question is about special needs trusts. What type of organizations service them? There's also organizations that create pool trusts, D4A trusts, and third-party trusts. So I'll explain. A supplemental needs trust, also called a special needs trust, for those who don't know, is a trust that you set up for a person, whether it's a spouse, a child, a parent, who has some type of supplemental need, where we want them to get public benefits and or they can't manage the money. Okay? A person, if my spouse has dementia diagnosis, I may fund a supplemental needs trust for him, even though today he can't manage his assets. I mean, he can manage his assets, but I'm looking for the future. You can have a professional trustee. There's nonprofits in North Carolina. There's a nonprofit that will do it. There's professionals, or you can name a family member to serve as a trustee, the person who will administer the assets for the benefit of the disabled person. Supplemental needs trusts are very important, because when I leave assets to my 3 children today, they might all be healthy. But on the day I die, one of them might be in the car with me and now has a traumatic brain injury. So my plan has to say, I give to my child, but wait a minute, if they have special needs on my death, I want you to put a wall around that money and assets to protect it, so that the government doesn't suck it up or disqualify them from their benefits. So to answer your question, yes, there are others that will serve as supplemental needs trusts as trustees for supplemental needs trusts. There's different types of supplemental needs trusts. You can fund a supplemental needs trust if you're under 65 years of age with your own assets that will be protected while you're alive, so that you can qualify for public benefits. There's other type of trusts called sole benefit trusts that are also for a person with supplemental needs. This should be part of your planning, or in a crisis plan, part of your planning.
What would be the different kind of trust you would recommend for a moderate income family versus high income? High income families can fund the trust in a lot of ways, but say a nurse or people who have just a regular job, how would they fund?
So you're talking about a special needs trust?
Especially?
So a special needs trust can, and this is about financing care for another person. A supplemental needs trust that we create for somebody else, parent, sibling, child, spouse. When you fund it at death, if that's what you're talking about, it can be funded with money you leave behind. Life insurance, retirement is really good because they get a lifetime stretch under the Secure Act, which is pretty damn good. And then you also have other monies that you might have, monies that you inherit or a lawsuit. So you could have a wrongful death action. Someone takes you out at a light. Now you didn't really have a big savings, but now someone's killed you. That money can fund your supplemental needs trust if your estate plan discusses wrongful death claims, which pass by intestate, which, if you don't address them, which could disqualify that supplemental needs person. So if it's a supplemental needs person, it's always a supplemental needs trust. If it's a healthy person without any supplemental needs, it can be funded at death. All trusts can be funded during life or death. So life insurance is a good equalizer. If you need to fund a trust for somebody, term insurance would be great because then you can get that money in there for them and it's less expensive. When we're talking about selling real estate, when to sell real estate is really important. One, the market, of course, is important, but also situational. You have to look at the situation. If I'm a husband and wife, and my husband's Ed, I always throw him under the bus. Ed's under the bus again. Good thing he's not here. And he needs a nursing home, and I don't want to live in the same house because maybe I don't need a big house. Do I sell the house before I apply for Medicaid or after? That's important because we want to make sure that if we sell the house and I'm the healthy spouse, I'm going to need that money. So timing is very important in planning when we sell the house. Okay? That's very important. When it gets sold, how it gets sold, and about the taxes, always. That was a good question. Yes?
Is the look-back period for Medicaid still 7 years, or what is the look-back?
Good question. So the question was, for those at home, what is the Medicaid look-back period? The Medicaid look-back period is 5 years. 5 years. So how does that work? The Medicaid look-back period affects single folks more than it affects married folks. There's more planning opportunities when two people are alive in a marriage. But planning and asset preservation can still be done within the 5-year period. Okay? So asset preservation can still be done for a married couple, much greater, and also for a single person. But we have to go back to their durable power of attorney if the person lacks capacity. What does it say? What does that document say? Because that's a key document. Or are the assets in trust? Do they build in more flexibilities for the family? Did they do any pre-planning? Or are we in crisis planning? But we could still preserve assets during the 5-year period. VA has a 3-year look back. Other questions?
Would you define what the look back period is? I'm pretty ignorant about that.
Okay, that's great. But the question is, what is the look back period? So the look back period means on the day I apply for Medicaid, which is the payer of last resort, which will pay for benefits. Those benefits might be those benefits are life benefits in a skilled nursing home. They're gonna pay my premiums above what my income is, Social Security and pension, or they're going to pay for my assisted living for me, which is called special assistance. So Medicaid pays for skilled nursing care, and that they're going to expect you to kick in your pension, Social Security, your income. If you have a spouse, some of it can stay with the spouse. Special assistance is another program under the Medicaid umbrella that pays for assisted living for people that make under a certain amount of income. When you apply for Medicaid, for skilled nursing, they're going to look, and the day I applied, they're going to look behind you for 5 years and see what you did with your money. they're going to give you basically an audit. Did you give it away? Did you sign your house over to your kids? They want to know everything because they're going to give you a time penalty for money you give away. So let's just say for this example, for every $7,000 you give away, they're going to penalize you 1 month until you have to private pay. That's not a good thing if the nursing home's 10 grand a month. So any type of transfers or gifting has to be done controlled so that you don't incur extra penalty, or if you are going to get a penalty, you have done it so deliberately as part of a plan. Special assistance, the look back is less time, a couple of years. They're also going to look to see what you gave away for the past few years, not 5, but their penalty divisor is less. So you get a longer penalty. Again, you don't want to be giving assets away. Some folks say, well, the IRS says I can give $17,000 a year away. I'm giving it away every year. Can I do that? That's for tax purposes, not for public benefits purposes. Then the VA, they have their own look back periods. When you apply to them, they're going to also look back to see if you've given anything away. So any type of gifting has to be strategized based on which benefit you want, whether you're married or not, and whether you have a child that has supplemental needs, or you have a child with supplemental needs living in your home, or a sibling that's living in your home. And if you have a child caregiver living in your home, there may be some extra benefit to them regarding the house, the homestead. So this is, again, you want to talk to someone who understands the rules. The look back period is very important.
How do your services work? This is a lot of information. Could you please share with us, like my husband and I, how would we go, how does this work with your law firm? Do you sit down and have a plan where we're going to meet 4 or 5 times and we're going to go over all these healthcare power of attorney, your assets, your retirement? How does this all work?
So the question was, for those at home, how does this all work? What happens when you meet with an attorney? What should they be doing? What would you be doing at our firm? So when people come to our firm, we're going to have them fill out paperwork so that we know about their family, kids, diagnosis, how the assets. If they have prior estate plan documents, we're going to want to read them. If they own an interest in a business, we're going to want to see that paperwork as well. And we sit down and we do an evaluation of what they have. And then we ask the critical question is, what are your objectives? What's the most important thing to you that's supposed to happen or not happen? And are you dealing with a diagnosis or a crisis now? We're going to ask about kids and grandkids. Got to know if we have a child with autism, grandchild with autism, we want to know because we have to build something in here. We have to talk about what does that mean. If your child's in the middle of a divorce or in a bad marriage or has a dependency on a substance, it's got to be built in. So for every family, it's different. But we do what we call information gathering. And then once we do that information gathering, we sit down and we give proposal for what the plan should look like. It's different for everybody based on their objectives. The wish list, what they want done when they pass, if they become disabled, and how do they want things to go with their family as far as family harmony goes. Okay, so it's different. So we do a consultation, and then we outline some things for the family, and if they decide to move forward, we go into designing and creating a plan that's customized for that family. So typically it takes about 8 weeks.
Both my husband and I are veterans. He has 8 years and I have 4, so we were not retired. But, are there legal services through our Veterans
Yes.
Administration right here that we could be taken advantage of?
Well, so this prescription stuff, even if you're not retired through the military, but you were in for that time. So they do have prescription services. If you served during wartime, we've been at wartime for quite a long time. Then I'm not on that slide as I point up here. You could have that aid and attendance, and then you have to watch for, if you ever were in country anywhere, whether you get one of these presumptive conditions. And one of the presumptive conditions that they just added one, it's not even related to It's not even related to being in country somewhere. It's just if you get this condition, you're going to get disability under the VA. So you always want to be looking at those.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Sorry, someone asked about, what about the PACE program?
Great question. Thank you. So the PACE program was up on my slide. I missed that one. The PACE program is a program that is all inclusive for seniors. It's an excellent program. It's nationwide. In some states, it pays for assisted living. In North Carolina, it does not. That's important to know if you had other family in other parts of the country and you want to use the PACE program. But the PACE program here is county by county. And what they do is if you enroll in the PACE program, they take over the healthcare for your enrollee, senior, such that they will manage the healthcare. They're going to be there for you to help with that, so it's not a burden to you all the time. If the person can't be in the home 5 days a week, they're going to be able to go over to PACE, the campus, and they'll send the bus to pick them up. They can eat there, and they're going to bring them back. They're going to help with medication management, and it's having a buddy there to help. The PACE program, you can private pay, or you can use Medicaid to pay. So if the going rate for PACE is $6,000 a month, you could private pay for it, or you could let Medicaid pay for it. The great thing about the PACE program is, unlike if you were in a skilled nursing where all of your money goes to the nursing home, if you're in PACE, you get to keep some of your money, and then some of it goes to the program. But for pre-planning purposes, to think about PACE, if you're pre-planning, thinking down the road, you would want to be thinking about, well, if I made $3,500 a month and I was allowed to keep $1,200 of that, and the rest of it went to PACE, and they were giving me a good deal because I'm actually being able to stay in my home because I'm participating in this program. I don't have to be in a nursing home or assisted living. Or maybe I'm in the home of my child and it's allowing them to go to work all week and I get to sleep in my own bed at night. Will I have enough money to pay for those extra things that I need with the amount I'm allowed to keep? So this is where pre-planning can be helpful, because you could put money in trust and then have that money that you have in trust to pay for those extra things that you need. The Uber, or the college student who drives you around, the lawn getting mowed, your taxes on your house, your homeowner's insurance, the new water heater, those types of things. Because in the public benefit arena, they're not thinking about the real life expenses people have. So it's fantastic they're going to let me in the program, but I still have to pay all these bills. So that you have to be thinking about that. But PACE does help folks stay at home, and it is a great benefit, and they're really helpful if you call and you want to go down and talk to somebody. They do a great job.
Adult day health is also a veteran approved benefit.
I couldn't hear you. I want to repeat it.
Adult day health
Adult day health
is like adult daycare centers.
centers is veteran approved. You're talking about like Elder House?
Yes.
So the VA does offer all those extra financing, and they can also, in some situations, pay for a disabled vet's caretaker. So if a person is disabled related to their service, they can have the caretaker who's caring for them be paid through the VA. So that's another benefit. So there's so many nuances, and they don't all apply to each family. And that's why it's really important to talk to your qualified professionals to help you. I will tell you, if you apply for VA benefits, no person can charge you. The people that are certified in VA, veterans, do not charge to help with the application. You can fill out an application at the Veterans Service Organization, the VSO, in your county, and they'll help you do that. Many people get denied because the application is completed incorrectly. You don't want that to happen. But also because they didn't put enough information with their application. So you do want to talk to a professional to be sure that you are putting in the right information with your application so that you have a fully developed application when you're submitting it. And you have that discharge DD 214. There was some VA records that were burned in a fire. If your veteran his records or her records were there, there's forms you can fill out to get copies. So you may not want VA today, but you want to be able to you should put your hands on the DD 214. So if you want to apply for it later, you can. Okay. Yes, sir.
My in-laws live in Illinois, and if they need care, they probably have to come here. They're both on disability now. How do things transfer? What things need to be set up to start caring for somebody right after you move?
The question is, if I'm moving somebody from state A to North Carolina, how do I continue care or finance care? So if the person is on Medicaid in another state, you can do Medicaid transfer. You want to start that process a few months before you would plan on doing the move. You also want to look at what they did prior as far as any gifting or transfers they made, and talk to someone before you start the process to make sure you're not going to have any hiccups. If they're receiving disability, so disability could be Social Security disability, and there's two types of Social Security disability. The kind that we're entitled to because we worked our quarters and we get it. The other kind is not entitled to. It's something we get because we have not worked our quarters, and it is it's not an entitlement program. And I don't want to use the word welfare, but it's something the government's going to do for somebody who doesn't have it. But because they give it to you, the disability under SSI, they comes with some strings. Can't have more than $2,000. You can have a home, but with SSI comes Medicaid, and with Medicaid comes more strings. So if someone's getting disability, you want to know, is it SSDI or SSI? You also want to know if they're getting Medicare or Medicaid. Medicare is something we're entitled to because we worked, we made our quarters, and we get it. And Medicaid is something we get because we were impoverished. But there are some people who worked, but they didn't make enough money to, they didn't make enough money that the Social Security is high enough to be, let's say, above the poverty line. So they get a little bit of SSI added to their Social Security that they are entitled to. Because they get that SSI, they are now going to have the government paying for their Medicare premium. Again, this comes with strings. So it's really important when you're helping someone to know what they're getting for benefits, so we know what strings are attached as you make the decision for whether you move them, when you move them, or whether selling their house, what's going to happen. You want to talk to a professional about that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This is a silly one, probably for you, but what's the range of Medicare premiums that people would pay?
So Medicare premiums are based somewhat on your income. So yeah, it's going to, most folks income is lower when they retire. So they're going to be under $200. So, but it's worth it because the cost of insurance is so high.
And is it true that if you don't apply for Medicare at 65, there's a 25% penalties.
So they do, I am licensed in Medicare, but I don't consider myself an expert in Medicare because I don't do enough of those. But I will tell you, they will penalize you if you miss the deadlines.
I can actually speak up on that one a little bit. So as far as Medicare is concerned, if you don't sign up as you turn 65 and you do not have any credible group coverage, then that is when they will begin to tack on a penalty to your actual Medicare itself and the prescription drug coverage. But if you have any form of group coverage through an employer typically, and you defer your Part B premium, then you will not have the penalties tacked on. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, awesome.
That was a lot. I'm going to ask you to come up and repeat that into the mic for the people at home.
Okay.
Would you mind? Because that's great information and we want to make sure everybody gets that.
Yeah,
Thank you so
absolutely.
much. And will you introduce yourself also?
Yeah, sorry. So my name's Brody. I'm actually a resident Medicare specialist. I wanted to come by and just hear a couple of things from what other people had to say, a couple of concerns. But the question was, if you do not apply for Medicare as you turn 65, will you get penalized? And the answer is yes, if you do not have any credible group coverage. So if you turn 65, but you're still working, you can defer that Part B premium and you will not get any form of penalty. But if you turn 65, do not have any form of employer that's providing you coverage, and then do not go on to Medicare, then that is when the government will tack that penalty on. Yeah.
What does it mean when you say defer that Part D? Is that the donut hole?
So the donut hole applies to prescription drugs.
Okay.
Deferring your Part B.
Oh, it's B and not.
Part B, yeah. So deferring your Part B means just to not elect to take that specific part of Medicare at the time. So Part B covers doctor visits. So it's electing to not have the doctor coverage of Part B and not have that Part B premium taken out of your Social Security check at that time.
So if you do have that other insurance at the time you turn 65, you still have to do something? Are you saying you still have to do a non-election for the Part B?
Yes, that's exactly correct.
So you do have to do something?
You have to do something,
Okay.
but you don't have to sign up for Medicare itself as long as you go through the channels to make sure that it is properly deferred.
Okay.
We have a question in the back.
So, yeah, for example, I'll be turning 65 in a couple years, okay? But I'm still planning on working.
Mhm.
God forbid, nothing happens. So I can keep my employer insurance, but I do have to let Medicare know that I'm keeping my employee.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So the question was, if she does continue working, do you just have to make sure that Medicare knows that you're continuing to work and staying on your group coverage? And that's absolutely correct. So it's a very simple process. And all you really need to do is just go onto ssa.gov. And as you're applying for Medicare, say, I wish to not elect to take Part B at this time.
And then when you're ready,
Yep, then you
you
just,
already have that in your chart. Or
Yep.
And then, yeah, so, okay.
then you just, once you do
That's it.
become ready,
Yeah.
all you do is you just elect to take in your Part B, and you'll be all set to have both your Parts A and B for Medicare.
So Brody, where does somebody go to talk to a Medicare specialist?
So there's a lot of different agencies that'll actually do it. Myself, I actually represent Bankers Life and a lot of different companies as well. And I'm a local representative that actually helps people walk through the entire process. You know, I sit down and make sure that whatever their actual concerns are answered. All questions, anything that along the lines of that nature, just making sure that for their specific situation, we can tailor it to make sure their Medicare is doing what they want for them.
And so when a person comes to see a Medicare specialist like you, do they pay you or who pays for your services to assist them?
So my services are actually paid by through the insurance company. So an individual would never have to pay me anything. all I do is just sit down and make sure that everything that they have is covered. Any compensation I get is not at any cost to anyone in particular.
And so, and your office is here in town?
Yeah.
And what's the name of the company? I didn't catch
The
that.
name of the company is Banker's Life. We're located right on Military Cutoff Road.
Okay, great. And they would ask for Brody, what's your last name?
Brody Turner.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you, Brody. That's
Yeah.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was great. Well, that's great. Well, thank you, guys. If there's no more questions, then we'll sign off. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Lisa, for fabulous information. There's a lot of information, so the slide deck will be available later for your further review. And thank you for Intracoastal for sponsoring this evening's meeting. And be sure that you fill out feedback forms on your table. Take a schedule with you so you can join us for our next meeting, which is May the 9th. And it is actually going to be Thank You for Your Service, Veterans Affairs Benefits. So hopefully you'll be here and watch online as well for that. We do have a giveaway tonight. This is a chicken soup for the soul for family caregivers. And we're going to give it away to whoever's birthday is closest to today. Moving forward. So we're going to start with moving forward. Does anybody have a birthday in April? What's your birthday?
April 28th.
Anybody closer than April the 28th? All right, then this book is yours for coming tonight. And thank you all for joining us. Have a good evening.
Let's see, how am I gonna work this? Okay, I'm just gonna go, see, all of y'all are caretakers, right? Are you a caretaker? You're not, anybody here?
She's a caretaker.
Thanks. So.
You're welcome.
Are you? Yes. Well, thank you. You're welcome. Why can't you take it? Oh, no, go ahead, please. Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, she's definitely a caretaker of her